Climate change, or global warming, is something we hear about all the time. But what exactly is warming our planet? And how will it impact our Earth and the life that calls it home? Earth has a layer of gases around it which we call our atmosphere. This atmosphere acts like a barrier of sorts. It protects us from harmful radiation coming from the sun. The atmosphere also helps keep the Earth warm enough to support life. This happens because some of the gases in our atmosphere, like carbon dioxide and methane, are able to trap heat from the sun. These are called greenhouse gases. A greenhouse works by trapping the light from the sun inside of a glass cage. This can provide warm temperatures for the plants inside during the cold winter months. Carbon dioxide and methane are called greenhouse gases because they too are able to trap the sun's heat and make the Earth warm, just like a greenhouse would. Without any greenhouse gases, our Earth would be cold and deserted just like Mars, but too much of it could make our planet hot and lifeless, like Venus. We need just the right amount to have a climate like ours on Earth. As a matter of fact, CO2, the greenhouse gas responsible for about 80% of global temperature rise, only makes up around 0.03% of our atmosphere, so even small changes can have big consequences. Unfortunately, many of our factories, cars, power plants, and the way we make our food emit plenty of greenhouse gases when they burn fossil fuels like coal and oil. This adds more CO2 to the atmosphere, thereby making our planet hotter. This is really important because recently the Earth has been warming fast. You may say that the Earth has warmed up before, and you would be correct. We actually used to be in an ice age not too long ago. The difference this time, however, is the rate at which the Earth is warming. The planet is warming much faster than what it's used to. Global air temperatures have gone up by about 1 degree since the Industrial Revolution. 2/3 of this rise in temperature has happened since 1975. In the past, it's taken the planet about 5,000 years to warm 5 degrees. We're actually expected to go 20 times faster than that this century. Animals and plants that would usually have a chance to evolve adaptations or migrate to deal with the changing climate over thousands of years now have almost no time and therefore face extinction. As well as this, rising temperatures result in higher sea levels as hotter water expands and melting ice flows into the seas. A warmer climate will also lead to more extreme weather events such as intense hurricanes and longer droughts. Climate change is a global problem that will need everyone's help to fix.
So, the journal article explores the connection between climate change and mental health, emphasizing the often overlooked threat it poses. It discusses the direct and indirect impacts on climate change on mental well-being, as well as the challenges in attributing mental health issues to climate change. Despite these challenges, the article highlights opportunities for research and intervention. It suggests priority actions such as emission reduction and adaptation strategies to mitigate the adverse effects on mental health. Overall, the article calls for greater recognition and comprehensive action to address the mental health implications of climate change.
So, in what ways does climate change impact mental health, both directly and indirectly?
Climate change impacts mental health directly through extreme weather events such as heat waves, hurricanes, flooding, as well as indirectly through disruption to social and physical infrastructure, food and water shortages, conflicts, and forced migration. So, the second article examines how the public perceives environmental issues such as climate change and pharmaceutical pollution as psychologically distant, which affects their willingness to behave in environmentally friendly ways. Drawing on studies by Spence et al. 2012 and recent adaptations, the article examines how individuals perceive these environmental issues across spatial, temporal, social, and hypothetical dimensions. It discusses findings that reveal a nuanced understanding of perceived proximity and distance influenced by cognitive biases such as optimism bias. The article emphasizes the importance of bridging the gap between public awareness and action on environmental sustainability through targeted interventions. It highlights the complexity of public perceptions of climate change and other environmental challenges.
How do individuals perceive environmental issues such as climate change and pharmaceutical pollution in terms of psychological distance? What factors contribute to these perceptions?
So, individuals perceive environmental issues directly based on various factors such as their level of knowledge, personal experience, cultural backgrounds, and media exposure. Climate change, for example, may be perceived as psychologically distant in some dimensions, for example, spatially and socially, while proximal in others, for example, temporally and hypothetically. This variation in perception highlights the complexity of how people conceptualize and prioritize environmental concerns.
How might increased environmental knowledge affect individuals' perceptions of psychological distance regarding ecological issues? Can greater awareness mitigate optimism bias and encourage pro-environmental behaviors?
Well, increased environmental knowledge can influence individuals' perceptions of psychological distance by providing a clearer understanding of the interconnectedness of environmental issues and their potential impacts on personal and collective well-being. Greater awareness may help mitigate optimism bias by highlighting the relevance of environmental issues to individuals' lives and communities. So the third journal article, Understanding the Psychological Dimensions of Vulnerability to Climate Change, explores the importance of incorporating psychological research into assessing human vulnerability to climate change. So it emphasizes the interdisciplinary nature of addressing climate change impacts and highlights how understanding psychological factors can enhance our response to climate-related hazards. The article also discusses various psychological dimensions influencing vulnerability, including consumption patterns, social context, cognitive biases, and emotional responses. It also examines the role of psychological research in disaster preparedness efforts and resilience building initiatives. Overall, the article underscores the critical role of psychology in understanding and mitigating in human impacts of climate change, ultimately contributing to creating more resilient communities.
According to the article, what are the key dimensions of vulnerability to climate change and how do psychological factors contribute to these dimensions?
Well, the critical dimensions of vulnerability to climate change discussed in the article include exposure to stresses, sensitivity to those stresses, and adaptive capacity. Psychological factors contribute to these dimensions by influencing behaviors, attitude, and perceptions related to climate change.